How is globalization changing religion? With the increases in globalization, we've seen increased contacts between people of different faiths. Thus, people have an increased awareness of the existence of other religions. The forces of time-space compression, uneven development, and conflicts between nation-states all affect religions around the world. In the US, globalization has surely led to more religious diversity. We also sometimes see the hardening of faith in response to globalization. How, for example, have the migrations of Mexicans into the United States affected the practice of Catholicism? There's an increase in the prevalence of the Virgin of Guadalupe, Mexicans' patron saint. Even here in the town where I live, there are regular Spanish-language masses. Immigrant groups come together for religious services and support. There are a large number of Ghanaian churches in my area, for example, right, that bring the Ghanaian community together here. My colleague at Miami, Dr. James Below, has published an edited volume on the social life of scriptures, right, about scriptural life and the use of the Bible, both in the US and globally. This book contains chapters on the Bible and Rastafarian belief and practice, how charismatic Mayan Catholics use the Bible differently from mainstream Mayan Catholics, Biblicism among Chinese Christian evangelicals, and Bible zines among US evangelical Protestants. All of these suggest different ways that people are using the Bible in an era of global Christianity. In this presentation, I want to focus on the globalization of religion in Gabon, where I've done most of my fieldwork. Gabon is a small country on the equator in West Central Africa, but even there, the globalization of religion is much in evidence, both historically and at present. In Gabon, Christianity, neo-traditional African religious practices, and Islam mingle in a global context. Gabon thus exemplifies what scholar Ali Mazrui has called Africa's triple religious heritage, comprised of what he calls Africanity, Christianity, and Islam. Here you see images of traditional religious ceremonies, a Pentecostal Christian church, and Muslims. Few Gabonese practice Islam, but there is a large West African Muslim population that has moved to Gabon, a fairly wealthy country, for economic opportunities. Also, Gabonese President Ali Bongo Ondimba is Muslim. Here, I want to survey some examples of globalization and religious diversity in colonial and especially post-colonial Gabon. Today, about half of Gabonese live in the capital, Libreville. Libreville is a center of government and commerce with a cosmopolitan population, including African immigrants, Europeans, and Lebanese merchants, both Christian and Muslim, as well as growing numbers of Chinese. There's also a vibrant spiritual life here, with many churches, mosques, and African temples. Most of my research has been in the north and northeast, in small towns and villages. I'll show you examples from both Libreville and the interior. In northeastern Gabon, we also find much evidence of Africa's triple religious heritage, with mission and evangelical churches, neo-traditional temples and spirit practices, and in towns and gold camps, mosques that serve West African merchants. First, I should mention that on the eve of colonization in the 19th century, peoples in northern Gabon venerated the ancestors. Here you see Obamba from eastern Gabon with ancestor relics and reliquary statues. The ancestors, or living dead, continued to play a vital role in their community, providing guidance, protection, and sometimes sanctions for neglect and wrongdoing. Here you see Fang wooden reliquary statues called bieri, as well as illustrations of cylindrical reliquary containers, statues and relics drawn by the Swedish missionary Fernand Grébert. The Fang are patrilineal, so the ancestors were controlled by senior men and passed down to their sons. They kept relics, especially of illustrious individuals, big men, strong warriors, eloquent speakers, but also important women and mothers. The keeping of relics and reliquary statues fell largely into disuse during the colonial era. Few Gabonese keep relics anymore, at least not publicly, but even today, villagers frequently bury their dead behind their houses and so live close by the departed. Here you see shots from an end-of-mourning ceremony in northern Gabon. On the left, a dance troupe leader has taken photos of a departed grandmother and granddaughter to a Protestant cemetery in the northern town of Gabon. This ritual is a way of calling the departed to attend the last day of the ceremony. On the right, women in the dance troupe dance with the dead. In a sense, the photographs have become relics. But it's important to note that the family that organized this end-of-mourning ceremony is Protestant. The 4-day ceremony began with a Protestant prayer service, and the Protestant choir sang daily along with the drumming and Neotraditional dancing. In fact, these people belonged to the Gabonese Evangelical Church, which was descended from the church founded by U.S. missionaries in coastal Libreville in the 1840s, just prior to initial French colonization. These two men, both Presbyterians, along with others, pioneered U.S. missionary efforts in Gabon. In 1842, John Layton Wilson opened a mission station at Baraka, today a quarter of the capital city, Libreville, on the Gabon estuary. Wilson was from South Carolina, but was adamantly opposed to the Atlantic slave trade. Nassau, from New Jersey, served in Gabon as well as neighboring Equatorial Guinea and Cameroon from 1861 to 1906. On the right, you can see Baraka Church, originally built by the Americans. The Americans finally left Gabon in 1911 due to increasing pressure from French colonial officials. They ceded their missions to the Paris Evangelical Mission Society, which operated until Gabonese independence in 1960. 2 years after Wilson arrived in Gabon, French Catholic missionary Jean-Rémy Bessieux founded a Catholic church a few miles north from the American mission, closer to the French colonial headquarters, which had just been occupied. Today, this is the site of the main Catholic cathedral in Gabon. The Roman Catholic Church remains the largest church in Gabon. Here you see Sunday Mass at Saint-Michel Parish in Libreville. Attendance is so high that this parish had to build an annex in the back. The day I attended, we sat there and listened to the Mass on loudspeakers. On the lower left, you can see a priest who has come to serve communion in the annex. Today, many Gabonese are initiated into Neotraditional religions. In northern Gabon, most ancestor religions declined during the colonial period, in part due to colonial and missionary efforts. Many Gabonese, however, adopted southern Gabonese healing and spirit religions such as Bwiti and Mbiri, which are also widely practiced. Gabonese also consult healers or tradi practitioners for a variety of ailments: medical, psychological, social, economic, spiritual, and others. Illness in Gabon is thus broadly conceived. Prolonged or mysterious illness, failure in school, employment, marriage, or to conceive children are all considered illnesses. Frequently, people take recourse with the tradi practitioners who build temples, consult patients, confer with the spirits, organize elaborate initiation and healing ceremonies. Often people consider these maladies to have been provoked by spiteful witchcraft or sorcery, or occasionally by the ancestors and spirits as a call to become a healer. I've attended many ceremonies in recent years. Here are just a few. In the 1970s and 1980s, Nguema Antoine, shown here, was one of the most well-known ritual specialists and healers in northern Gabon. Here you see him in a magazine photo from 1980 holding a sign that says, Nguema Antoine, the African Doctor. He held regular consultation ceremonies in which he listened to the spirits through his wand. This served both in diagnosis and in indicating proper treatment. He also initiated many people into his healing practice, and some of these continue to serve today. In 2005, I met his son, Daniel, who had spent 10 years in Germany gaining advanced degrees in the sciences and working until the spirits obliged him to return home to inherit his father's practice. Today, Daniel lives and works in Libreville, but returns home regularly to take care of spiritual matters. In 2005, I attended and participated in a consultation ceremony in his village. On the upper left, you see Daniel speaking on a cell phone. On the lower right, you see him listening to the spirits with his wand. Here, you see one of Daniel's initiates consulting and treating my wife, who is Gabonese. In July 2007, I interviewed Francois Ousmane Longo, a Kota policeman and healer in Libreville. He spoke of his spiritual biography and healing practice, which draws on two domains, Mimbale and Bwanga. The sign on the top left says Traditional Medicine, Biotherapeutic Center, Seeing and Healing, Deliverance and Initiation, Temple of the Doctor, Angel of Mimbale. The sign also lists numerous ailments, physical and spiritual, that Francois treats. Note the Christian images in his consultation room, as well as the poster of the Great Mosque of Mecca. Back in Gabon in January 2008, I attended an all-night Bwanga initiation ceremony. In July 2008, I attended a Nziriang reconciliation ceremony for the followers of a powerful charismatic healer from northeastern Gabon who had died a decade earlier. His community of followers had splintered, and the goal of the ceremony was to appease the spirits and bring the community back together. You see the organizer, Monsignor Celestin Mesui, on the bottom left. On the top right, you see his daughter, Venus, holding a movie camera to film the action. Almost immediately after the all-night ceremony drew to a close, Monsignor Mesui called everyone into his Nziriang temple, where he celebrated a traditional Roman Apostolic Mass in Latin, which he said he'd never studied. Instead, the spirits revealed the language to him during one of his initiations. The traditional Roman Apostolic Church has sought to preserve pre-Vatican II liturgy. In addition to being a Nziriang priest and archbishop in the traditional Roman Apostolic Church, Monsignor Mesui is also a retired general in the Gabonese penitentiary service. He also has advanced degrees from France. His story gives you an inkling into the globalization of Gabonese religious practice. And here, on the bottom right, you can see his daughter, Venus, who has visited my wife and me in southwestern Ohio. Another global connection. Since 2008, I've lived with Bwiti priestess Fabienne Gungu, who lives in Libreville, where she and her husband run a Bwiti temple and healing practice. Here you see some of her many activities. Clockwise from the top left, we see her consulting a woman patient, a shot of her temple, which serves as a sort of open-air living room when ceremonies are not taking place. Then she treats the burn wounds of a patient, prepares iboga for an upcoming initiation Here, gathers leaves and tree bark in nearby forests, rings a bell to alert the spirits while unblocking a man's professional problems, and administers a medicinal bath to a patient. In the center picture, Fabienne is in a small pool of water behind her house, possessed by the spirit Elombe, who is consulting a patient. Here you see Fabienne administering iboga to a patient and in a number of ceremonies. When she wears white, she's honoring Elombe. She also displays French and American flags, symbols of her global connections, and a Catholic communion cup in which she places iboga, which many Gabonese call the sacred wood. On the bottom left, she gives thanks to the spirits before a community meal. In recent years, Fabienne has traveled to a number of countries both to treat patients abroad and to speak at universities and conferences. Here you see her in Europe in 2008. On the top right, she's reading a paper at an academic conference. She also has children in France and Tunisia. Although she calls herself a tradi practitioner, she is indeed a global cosmopolitan citizen. Fabienne has also traveled to Japan, Brazil, India, Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Ohio. She's visited us twice and given lectures about her Bwiti practice at Miami University. Here you see her giving talks and with students at King Library, invoking the spirits in my home, and with women, war victims in eastern Congo. On her 2015 visit, her son, Taylor, accompanied her to practice his English. In addition to dancing at Bwiti ceremonies, Taylor is a talented modern dancer. Here you see him dancing at African Liberation Day in Cincinnati. In closing, I want to turn briefly to tradi practitioners, chief critics and competitors in Gabon, Pentecostal, Charismatic, or renewalist Christians. Since the 1980s, Pentecostalism has exploded in Gabon as elsewhere throughout the world. Many Pentecostal churches begin as tiny cells of believers who are fed up with what they see as a corruption and ineffectiveness of mainline or more established Pentecostal churches. Some have grown quickly, attracting large numbers of followers seeking spiritual growth, prosperity, and wellness. Gabonese Pentecostalism is part of a global movement. Bishop Mike Joktan, here of Cornerstone Church, studied theology at Oral Roberts University in Tulsa. Here are some signs of various churches, revivals, and crusades in Gabon. You see a Brazilian flag on the small God is Love church, pointing to the global impact of Brazilian Pentecostals. We also see signs from the Deeper Life Bible Church and the Reawakening of the Holy Spirit Christian Church in Libreville, as well as the Jesus Christ is the Lord Church in Makuku. On the top left is a sign for an October 2008 rally that draws on the world's favorite sport, soccer. It reads, Red Card, Grand Night of Funerals for Sorcery in Gabon. This suggests how Gabonese Pentecostals are using a global religious movement to address more local concerns of sorcery. On the bottom left, is a sign for a 2007 crusade to be attended by the late U.S. Pentecostal superstar, Dr. T.L. Osborne. Like Gabonese Pentecostals, Osborne practiced supernatural healing in his meetings. Another recent successful church, the Shekinah World Center Ministry of Spiritual Combat, was founded by Reverends Louis and Chantal Sarah Badinga. In 2015, they've expanded to a large new megachurch on the outskirts of Libreville. In January of this year, 2015, I attended 2 deliverance ceremonies for the young woman pictured here, who was possessed and tormented by the vindictive spirit of her grandparents. Both Reverend Badinga, shown in the top center, and his assistant, on the bottom right, were able to put the young woman into a trance-like state in order to make the spirit speak. Encountering initial resistance from the spirits, they invoke the fire of the Holy Spirit. Reverend Badinga, in particular, was able to make the spirits speak, confess what they were up to, and then commanded that they leave the young woman's body. In August 2007, I attended a Saturday night service at a packed Beatitudes Chapel behind the main cathedral in Libreville. The 3-hour service was highlighted by the informal, humorous, joyful sermon of a diminutive charismatic nun, Sister Anastasie, who mesmerized the attendees. Upon my return to Libreville in January 28, I again attended Saturday service at Beatitudes. On this occasion, Sister Anastasie was absent, but at the end of the service, the young Gabonese priest invited all those who were ill, suffering, or otherwise in need of benediction to approach the altar for a blessing. As if on cue, the pews emptied in mass as over half of those present poured into the center aisle to make their way forward. As I think back, 3 impressions remain with me. The first, of course, has to do with the spiritual force of Sister Anastasie. Second, the fact that several hundred, mostly young people and young adults, would sit in rapt attention for several hours every Saturday evening. Third, the widespread experience of illness and suffering, broadly defined, felt by those present, along with the need for benediction and healing. It is these 3 themes, the spiritual agency and power of women, the intensity of religious life in 21st century Gabon, and the widespread experience of suffering and need for healing that provide us with insight into contemporary Gabonese religious experience. I later learned that this was a local version of the global Catholic Charismatic Renewalist movement, which began in the U.S. in the 1960s and quickly spread throughout the Catholic world. Practices of the Charismatic Renewal movement include prophecy, faith healing, speaking in tongues, a personal relationship with Jesus, and the baptism of the Holy Spirit, all normally associated with Pentecostalism. Very briefly, let's turn to Islam in Gabon. While only about 1% of Gabonese are Muslim, there are thousands of Muslim West Africans and Lebanese who practice Islam in Gabon. I've already noted that Gabonese President Ali Bongo is Muslim. Here you see him at a Libreville mosque with Mohammed VI from Morocco. On the top left is a Muslim wedding ceremony in the Muslim quarter of the northern city of Oyem. On the top right, you see 2 West African merchants in a shop on the upper Ivindo. The shop below, owned by a Senegalese Muslim, does not sell beer, but in 2002 Very briefly, let's turn to Islam in Gabon. While only about 1% of Gabonese are Muslim, there are thousands of Muslim West Africans and Lebanese who practice Islam in Gabon. I've already noted that Gabonese President Ali Bongo is Muslim. Here you see him in a Libreville mosque with Mohammed VI, King of Morocco. On the top left is a Muslim wedding ceremony in the Muslim quarter of the northern city of Oyem. On the top right, you see 2 West African merchants in a shop on the upper Ivindo River. The shop below, owned by a Senegalese Muslim, does not sell beer, but in 2002 had no qualms about selling T-shirts that depicted Eminem surrounded by marijuana leaves. Thus, global religion and consumerism as well as American pop culture, have penetrated deep into the Gabonese interior. Here we see further examples of the mixture or hybridity of global religious icons alongside popular culture and capitalism. On the left, we see posters of Jesus along with a scantily clad couple in what appears to be a compromising position, and the global hip-hop star Tupac Shakur. On the right, we see paintings of George W. Bush alongside Osama bin Laden and Jesus. Lastly, I want to return briefly to the theme of participant observation. For the past decade or so, I've been studying Gabonese spiritual life, particularly spirit movements and initiation practices. At first, I just wanted to ask questions, but my host insisted on participant observation, including initiation. In the center picture, I'm holding a Bwiti harp that represents my own ancestor spirits. Yes, it felt very awkward, but I've learned a lot in the process. Sometimes it's just necessary to make a fool out of yourself in the name of science.